two of politicians in the car with me. We're about to pick up Iain Angus from his campaign office. Iain, well known, as we pull into what I think is his campaign office here. I see his vehicle. I see a lot of his signs. And let's see if Iain is ready to go. I believe he's in there. Let's give him a little beep beep. He's gonna take his coat off. Take your coat off. Stay a while, Iain. How are you, sir?
I'm good. Good morning.
Nice to see you.
Good. And actually, this is the first time we've ever physically met.
No, it is not.
Yes, it is.
We've just talked on the phone?
We've just talked on the phone.
We've just been like phone friends?
Yeah.
And Facebook friends?
Yeah.
All right. Say hi to everybody.
Hi, everybody.
All right. Nice campaign office.
Thank you.
You got enough signs?
Yeah.
I think so. You're kind of everywhere. How are you doing?
I'm doing well.
It's been busy.
It's busy, but it's been a fun campaign, and actually getting out, knocking on doors, and talking to people again. It's kind of neat.
Listen, you know what? So I don't know if you have any specific places you want to go. I've got a couple places.
Let's follow your lead.
Okay. I got to ask an important question. Listen, you've been at this for a long time.
I have.
And it's no secret that you ballot very high in the at-large race, and you've done extremely well in previous elections at large. Where does Iain Angus get the idea that, hey, maybe it's time to move up a chair?
Well, it has nothing to do with past successes. It had everything to do with the fact that that the mayor's chair was vacant,
right,
and that we've been going through some difficult times as a community, and that I felt that I had the knowledge, the style, the skills to take the new council through the next 4 years, to help us find the solutions to the crime situation,
right,
the racism, our relationships with the Indigenous community, and I'd like to come back to that later.
Sure, of course.
But also too, because I've been looking at the longer term vision for quite some time,
right,
and I think that if we're to move forward as a community, and to grow the community over the next number of years, we need somebody who is concerned with not just the next 4 years.
So you're thinking
the next 20 or 30 years.
So you're thinking that this is long-term commitment for you. This is where you want to take us to a whole different direction, and moving up to that chair is going to give you the ability to do that. Why couldn't you do that, or what do you think the roadblocks were for doing that as just an at-large councillor? You still only have one vote.
That's right. Well, and you're very correct. The mayor only has one vote. Mayor does not have any additional powers other than the ability to lead, to educate council, to work with the community at large, to pull together the folks that need to be sitting at the same table to talk about how do we deal with these issues.
Right.
So there's a sort of a moral suasion component. Plus, you add that to my experience at the federal and provincial level, the fact that I've already met with 13 of the new cabinet.
Wow.
Plus, I presented to the entire cabinet, less the premier. That gives me an edge in terms of taking whatever Thunder Bay decides is the message to Queen's Park, to work with the government to say, okay, here are our problems, but we just don't come and tell you our problems. Here are our solutions.
Right.
And here's why they fit within your mandate and within your approach to governing. Because if we do this, it'll save you money. If we do this, it'll save you money.
Right.
Looking to try and match their rhetoric with reality.
So with all that experience leading up to it, that's why you decided this was the moment.
That's right. It wasn't something I had sort of long-term vision to do, but I realized that here was an opportunity for me to make one more contribution to this community that I've grown up in, that I love, and I'm never going to leave.
We're kind of the same that way.
Good.
We're stuck here, aren't we?
I am not stuck here.
You're here by choice,
I'm
like
here
I
by
am.
choice.
Yeah.
And I've had the chance of living temporarily in other communities.
Me too.
In Canada, and I know what makes Thunder Bay so good.
And it's home, isn't it?
It is, yeah.
I'm taking you to my favorite place in the whole world.
Good.
We're just pulling into Marina Park. This park has probably got the most focus around the council table in the last couple of terms.
Yeah.
I go on record, full disclosure, that I am a huge fan of what was done here. I am a huge fan of the expansion of the park and the changes that were made. I spend a lot of time down here. I'm part of this community now. And
it helps to have an office right next door.
The office across the street helps, and then living on the water across the other side is pretty nice.
Yeah.
But I see, when I'm spending time down here, which is almost every day, I see hundreds and hundreds of people down here. This project worked, even though some people don't think it did.
That's right. And what's amazing is it worked better than any of us ever thought it would. Just, I mean, as you say, the hundreds and hundreds of people down here for all sorts of reasons.
And even when there's nothing going on.
Well, but it doesn't have to be programmed to be exciting.
Exactly.
The walkways, the vistas, the ability to watch sailboats going by
Just
on a leisurely basis.
Yeah.
And the skateboard park. Actually, this was an amazing one, both in terms of, we never expected this to be year-round.
No, and it is.
It is. And in fact, at one point we were looking at, do we have to build a building to store the shovels in for the kids and the not-so-kids?
You know what's interesting is that here we are. How many years has this been here now? 5?
At least 5, maybe more.
So look around. There is not a stitch of graffiti.
That's right.
There is nothing marked. And remember what everybody was saying when we were talking about this. It's going to get trashed. It's going to be it didn't happen. It is a main part of this park.
That's right. And the other thing about this is that there was great concern by the veterans about the proximity to
across the street,
the Naval Memorial, and what was wonderful was once the skateboard was up and running and they had a commemorative service at the memorial, the kids stopped, stood, watched, were respectful.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Okay, so the Delta has a new sign.
Oh, they got the sign up.
The sign, it looks nice, doesn't it?
And see all the lamps and the furniture.
Everything
and the
is ready to go.
Yeah, it's getting there. It's getting there.
Now, what was your this part of the expansion? Again, another bone of contention with a lot of people, with these 2 condos and now this hotel in this area. To me, I think it makes a lot of sense. And I think that hotel is going to do extremely well here.
Yes, it will.
What's your, overall, was this part of the original vision? Did you support this from the beginning with these new buildings on here that, I don't want to say it takes away from the park, because it doesn't, but it changes what the park is all about with this addition?
Yeah. So let me respond in a couple ways. Yes, I bought into the whole concept at the beginning for a couple of reasons. First of all, the federal government was not prepared to give us any money for a strictly public proposal.
Right.
There had to be the private sector involvement in order to lever this money. That was the nature of the Harper government. So it made sense to have some kind of private sector involvement. So that leads to the second part. I know firsthand from living at Chippewa and working at Chippewa how important it was to have those. At one point, it was about 110 cottagers out there.
Right.
Because they supplied the core business to the park.
Right.
Not so much themselves, but their family and friends that would come out on the weekends. Where do you go? You go up to the park.
Right.
So when you add residences into a major municipal park, you've got a guaranteed group to start with.
Right.
And that is paying off here, because all of these folks, they use the park.
They take their dogs for a walk.
Yeah.
They've got boats down here. They live and breathe this park. Yeah.
And it's no different than what we should have done in urban renewal back in when it was Fort William and Port Arthur.
Right.
We didn't complete the job because we didn't build mixed housing in order that there are more than enough people living in the core areas to shop in the core areas.
Right. And we still have that problem now. I think we're one of the only cities that doesn't have major condo complexes or those kinds of things in the cores that bring people to those areas.
That's right, and we've got to work on that, and that's part of what I want to do as mayor over the next 4 years.
Let's talk about the south part of the park, because this, again, on my show and our text line and conversations on the air, the art gallery comes up a lot.
Yep.
How much are we spending on this? What did we sign on for?
We're into it for, I think it's $5 million.
So,
but that levers $25 million
from the government.
Two other orders of government, plus the voluntary contributions from a range of individuals and corporations and what have you.
So this part of the park now is the next to be developed.
That's correct.
They're working right now on the new parking lots. The new parking lots on the other side here on Pearl have made a big difference. Obviously, this is the hotel parking too. But now the expansion on the south end towards what's going to be, I guess, the Transportation Museum and,
That's right.
and that hub.
That's a real bonus. That was never part of the original plan.
Well, that's what I was going to ask.
But it makes so much sense now that we've got the Alexander Henry and the Lakehead Transportation Museum group wanting to consolidate the Via Rail, the Brill buses
Right.
in one location. Makes eminent sense from a planning perspective. It's not inconsistent with the overall vision for the waterfront, and it's the right location.
We're looking at what used to be a part of a tugboat basin and a turnaround that was here. The old docks are still there, the edge of Pool 6. What do you think needs to happen here? Because somebody said to me something interesting the other day. There is no place at the marina to go put your feet in the water.
Yeah.
There's opportunity here now, isn't there?
Well, okay. First of all, where we are is where the art gallery is going to go.
Is it here?
No, it's there.
Oh, it's here.
It's there on the left-hand
on
side.
the water side.
Yes.
I didn't know that.
So
that's why we're doing this.
In fact, I guess the stakes are gone, but they had oh no, see the one stake up on the pile?
Right.
That's the one end of the
Isn't that
gallery.
Something?
Magnificent view. It's a 2-story building.
Oh wow.
And there'll be a balcony along the full length of it. So you'll be able to sit out there, enjoy the vista of the Sleeping Giant and Lake Superior.
Incredible.
Yeah. So, but back to your question. There is a hidden gem at the other end of the park that we discovered at the mouth of McVickers Creek. There's a sandy beach there.
There is, right at the very end.
And we've had some initial discussions about how do we open that up? Because other than Chippewa Park, with 2 beaches, there is no other place on Lake Superior within the city limits where you can easily get into the water.
That's right. So that's okay. So that's some good planning.
Yeah.
So
we're not there yet in terms of the plan.
But that's an idea.
Yeah.
But you're in full support of this continued expansion in the transportation section and
Very
all of
much
that.
So.
Because this has been an underutilized piece of city property for many years.
That's right. Yeah. But the other thing too is that we've got the plans for this area in terms of some kind of motocross.
I saw that
bike thing.
Right.
Some work along the peninsula here, landscaping and trails and what have you. Plus, continuing on the trail system further south. Once we acquire the land from the railroad to connect to where Northern Wood used to be.
Right. And that connects you to everything.
And then at the top, at the north end, we've agreed that we're going to build a trail that will take the McVickers Creek path across Cumberland Street, down under the trestle, under the tracks, and connect in here. So it allows for a more continuation of the trail system. And the one thing that we don't have on the books, but I want to see is a bridge over McVickers Creek at that location, so that we can connect to Front Street, which is a low volume street that goes almost down to Boulevard Lake, that people can use safely for bicycling coming down this way. So we're looking for all those connections that we can make.
And you're happy so far, in your terms, with how and the speed that we've developed this?
Very much so. And let me give you some history. I worked for recreation back in the 70s, then in parks after 77, and I worked closely with Joe Rawlson, the superintendent of parks. And every year he would put a little bit of money in the capital budget to do a little something at the waterfront here.
Right.
And so it was done incrementally. We've been able, because of the federal and provincial funding, to make major investments, to really create the focal point that it is today, which has really inspired what's happened in the waterfront district.
Yeah, I think it has too.
If we hadn't done this, that wouldn't have happened.
Right.
At least not to the extent it has. And so those who think that this is not economic development, this really is, because if you give people a reason to come down an area, they stay in the area.
Yep. And they are. And you just see that downtown with the restaurants popping up, etc.
Yeah.
We're going to go that way next because
Isn't it nice being on a roundabout?
We're going to the roundabout later, the other roundabout. We're going to talk about that. I got a beef.
Okay.
But we're going to head back into the downtown core here because I know, having you on council for the last number of years, you were one of the people that had a lot of questions about, because the hot topic in the last election was, of course, the event center.
Correct.
That technically would have, if all went well, would have been open this past summer.
Yeah. But stuff happens.
Well, but Iain, at some point, did you not look at that and go, I don't know, why are we spending this money? What if we don't get it? Because that's what ended up happening.
That's right. Now, the reality is, though, and I've been thinking about this in the last week or two because it's been raised on social media and in other places, is that when you have a concept, before you go out looking for dollars, whether it's your own dollars or somebody else's dollars, you need to know what it is you're looking at.
Right.
And you need to know what the costs are. So we had a responsibility because we know we have to do something with the Fort William Gardens.
Everybody knows that.
And I mean, we're all getting bigger, and a lot of us don't fit in those seats anymore. And even those who are still skinny, there's not enough leg room, so you have to sit sideways and bump your neighbors. So we've got to do something. I mean, that's oversimplification.
But it's true. Yeah. It's a different place now.
So part of the process was, okay, what do we replace it with? And we certainly would like to be able to go back to the size of arena that the Fort William Gardens once was, which was about, I think, 4,800.
But you could jam 6,000 people in there for a concert.
That's right, yeah, or a really good hockey game.
Yeah.
Back in the
Twins
days.
Oh,
yes.
Those were the best.
So you start with that, but they say, okay, if we're going to spend this kind of money, can we do some other things with that new building that expands its use? And we know that the gardens acoustics are not exactly the best, although I've heard a lot of really good groups in there.
Yeah.
But so how do we do it so we can bring the groups in? And do we have enough room to add some space for conference work? And that's what we did. And that was the process. We also went through the process of where should it be. And we looked at pretty well every other city in Canada that had built something similar in the last 20 years or so. And what we found, with one exception, was that every one of them was built in an existing downtown.
Right.
The exception was the Hamilton, where it was built on the edge.
Mm-hmm.
Those that built downtown saw a real economic spin-off. Hamilton didn't.
They didn't.
There's no growth around their arena.
But this is where, and I was in full support of this, and I know that there's a lot of people, friends of mine, that I still argue with about this, but this space, to me, makes the most sense just because of the accessibility of it, of the opportunities around it, and it just makes the most sense. So that ship has sailed. We know that eventually this will be the place. Is it something that you see wanting to work towards if you're the mayor? Is that something that's on your list, or are we taking a break from this?
Well, we have taken a break, and we've also used some of the money that we had set aside.
Okay.
So we don't have that $25 million pot to work from.
Right.
So the new council will have to put their minds to it. Administration has sort of put things on hold, pending the new council and new direction.
Mm-hmm.
We need to take a look at what Sudbury's done. They are doing theirs with debenture. There's no federal or provincial dollars, so they're going to be paying for it over X number of years. We now have the tourism tax,
mm-hmm.
which will raise $2 million a year. We could do what Duluth has done. They use part of their tourism tax to pay for the mortgage on the deck center.
Smart.
So because that's the folks coming in from out of town contributing to a local facility that is aimed at improving tourism, but also aimed at providing a service to the community.
Which is the goal.
Yeah.
But as we drive through this downtown, there is still a lot of empty space in here.
Yeah.
It's different than it used to be. And you remember the time, like I do, when Angus was here, and this was a bustling core. It's different now. We've changed as a city. We've changed as a market for a lot of retail places. What can be done down here to start filling up some of these places and to help out businesses, small and large, move in here?
Well, we've already done one thing. We've revised the core area program, which provides some incentives that allows an entrepreneur, a building owner, to come in, do the renovations, and we will rebate any tax increases until those renovations are paid off.
Okay.
So the incentives there. I think we still have the facade program, but beyond that, and I mentioned this earlier, we need to put more housing in the core, and I don't mean social housing. I mean a real good mix of housing. We need to do some assembly of land so we can do that.
So you would like to see the city then start to find parcels to make available for a condo or a complex of some kind.
That's right. Yeah.
Why hasn't it been done before?
There's been a sort of a mindset that says we'll leave that to the private sector.
Yeah.
Well, at some point
they've got no place to put it.
But a good example of what we did as a council was we decided we wanted to have the new courthouse built in the South Core,
right?
To stimulate the economy there. We assembled land. We then pitched it to the province. They agreed. We sold them the land. We did the other things that fit in.
Right.
And as a side benefit, we got the John Howard Society a new facility for them down the road.
Right.
Because they were in the YMCA. So we did a whole bunch of it. We can assemble the land. We just have to have the mandate, and it'll be up to the new council to say, yeah, we want to do that, and provide the direction to administration.
I think that's what we're missing.
Yeah.
If we had more people downtown, I think there would be that much more opportunity. So
yeah.
Let's look back a little bit in your time, especially in the last 4 or 8 years in your time on council. Lots has happened. And we're not getting into all of the nitty-gritty of all of that. But there were some contentious times around that table. I think that from the outside and as a follower of council, and I'm one of the only people that probably watches it every Monday night.
Actually, apparently we figured out about 10,000 people.
Really?
Yeah.
So I have friends.
Yeah.
You know what you got to fix is that black and white camera, Ian. You got to get that black and white camera finished. There's one camera in black and white, and the rest are in color. I feel bad for those guys on that side of the table.
We've been working on redoing all the electronics and that, because we know it's not exactly.
So I study these meetings, and I pay attention for a couple of reasons. One, it's my job, and two, there's a lot of people that really follow closely what goes on in those chambers. How would you rate your group working together in the last 8 years?
I think we've worked.
Now, don't give me the political answer. Don't be super nice about it.
No.
How have you done, though, really?
Well, no, I think we've done really well. And we joke about this. I mean, let's face it, everybody knows that Rebecca Johnson and I are on different sides of the spectrum.
Yes, you are.
But we joke about how many times we vote the same way.
That is true. Why is that?
Well, it's because
one of you likes to spend money, the other one doesn't.
But I like to spend money on quality of life.
That's right.
She just doesn't like to spend money at all. But Rebecca and I have been good friends for years. I think the key thing is that there has not been block voting on that council.
There used to be?
There have been in the past. There has been, but my sense, not just sense, but my knowledge is that while we will have split votes, and sometimes very close split votes, they are based on personal beliefs as to what's the appropriate direction to take. Andrew Folds and Paul Pugh and I don't always vote the same way, and yet people assume that we're voting in lockstep.
Right.
That doesn't happen. We have difference of opinion, and I think the strength of this past council and the ones before is that we understand the issues, we have our own perspective, and we vote accordingly. And very, very few times is there a split vote, and you can't guarantee who's on which side of that vote.
Right.
It'll depend on the issue, it'll depend on the knowledge of the individual members of council, and sometimes on where the pressure from the community is coming from.
So, as the mayor, then, when you look at that group, there is a good chance that if you're successful at the end of the month, that you're going to be sitting in front of a completely different set of people.
Yeah.
Now, there's going to be a lot of change around that table.
I don't think there's as much change as you're suggesting.
Really?
The
at-large positions are changing a lot.
Well,
a couple.
Okay, and this is some inside baseball, so my apologies for this. But people think that they have to vote for 5 people.
You don't have to vote. I've been saying this forever.
Good. But what happens is, let's say John Ungaro's running for at-large, and I'm supporting him.
Right.
So I'll vote for him, but then I'm going to cast 4 votes against him by voting for the names that I know.
Absolutely. This is
Larry,
a good lesson.
Rebecca,
this is a good lesson.
Aldo. I think that it will be 5 incumbents, and I'll qualify that, back at large.
You think so?
Because
of the way it'll be split.
That's right. And because if you look back, it took Aldo 3 elections and having a weekly column before he was break into at large.
True.
So we've got Hebert, Johnson, Roberto, who are technically running for re-election.
Right.
We've got Trevor Gertuga, who's moving over to at large.
Right.
You know, good, a solid name. And then we've got coming back in Mark Bentz.
Right.
Unless people, if they really don't want the incumbents, any of the incumbents, just vote for the one person you want on council.
What you're essentially doing is helping everybody else. Isn't this the downside, though? Isn't this the downside? I've always said this, and I realize it's how the world works. But in a lot of cases, more people vote against the winner than for them.
Yep.
And when there's 25 people running for 5 seats, inevitably there's going to be a split there.
Yep.
Does this speak to at all a change in how the makeup of that council should be?
Not in the makeup, and I'll come back to
because you know where I'm going with that.
Okay. That the province changed the Elections Act to give municipalities the option of going to a instead of a first past the post system,
right?
A rank ballot.
Okay.
City of London is
it's complicated.
Yeah, the City of London is using that this election.
They are first time.
First time. They're the only ones who've decided to do that. So we're going to be watching with interest how that works. And for the people listening, when you get your ballot, instead of putting an X beside people, you put a number. So my number 1 choice is A.
Right.
My number 2 choice is B, and so forth. You go right down the full list. So if after the first results are counted by computer, and your candidate doesn't rank up there, your second choice is then added, and third choice and fourth choice, because the ultimate goal is that 50%, or that the winning candidates
gets more than 50% of the votes.
That's right. So then they have confidence that they have a mandate from the community.
Makes sense.
Okay. So back to your original premise: size of council, makeup of council. People need to understand this was a compromise.
How so?
When after amalgamation, and I just learned this from Dick Waddington last night at the Current River all candidates meeting. I'd forgotten it. There were two. It was an all ward system. There were 2 representatives per ward elected.
That's right.
And then I was part of a group that was advocating for an all ward system. There was another group in the community that was advocating for an all at large system, which is what we had in the 2 former cities.
Right.
But in Fort William, all of the at-large candidates tend to live around Vickers Park. Okay, so there was not a diverse representation
Right.
across the board.
Right, they're all in one spot.
So the system we have now, 7 wards and 5 at large. The key part is the 7 wards. Not only is there an opportunity for a representative to actually live in and know that area and be, bumping into their constituents on an
Every
ongoing
day,
basis. It's easier to break in at the ward level. You can knock on every door. You can get to know the people, and you can defeat an incumbent like Shelley Chung
Defeated
Shelby
Mark.
Chung defeated Mark.
But so I have to ask then, and I apologize in advance for the challenge on this.
No, don't.
You are dealing with you're spending my money,
Mm-hmm.
and there are people that are making decisions about my money in a ward that are getting 1/10 of the votes that you're getting at large.
Yeah.
Is there? How do we? What's the defense to that?
Okay.
What is, to me, everybody should be voting for everybody. It just makes the most amount of sense, but that turns into an entirely different conversation.
That's right. But if you have all at large, it's going to be like the at large now.
It's going to be a popularity contest.
It's name recognition.
Yeah.
Hard for newbies to break through.
Right.
You compare it provincially. No one riding has the same number of voters. Up here, we now have a couple of the new ridings provincially that have a very small population.
That's true, and they still vote.
But very big geography.
Yeah.
So it's how do you connect with the constituents?
So you don't support the idea of one day moving away from the ward system?
No, I like the hybrid that we have. I think it works well. It allows, or ensures that each ward has a representative who you can contact, who you can talk to about whatever the issues are. But it's also 5 members who can spend their time thinking about the bigger issues.
But they don't spend the time thinking about the bigger issues. You were one of them. It wasn't for you. It was a full-time job.
Yeah.
But for somebody to apply for that full-time job and really properly represent the entire city, that takes a lot of work.
It does.
And as a politician or a retired person, you may have some time for that. But otherwise, how are you attracting people to apply for that job representing the whole city? For the pay that they're getting, for the amount of work that goes into that, shouldn't these be full-time jobs with people representing all constituents?
If we do that, you're talking about a significant increase in cost.
That's true.
And because, as we've seen in other cities, it's not just a full-time job, it's full-time staff as well.
That's true.
So,
good point.
The trade-offs. And we don't seem to be having any difficulty attracting 26 people to run for at-large.
Is this the biggest ever?
I think it is, but I'd have to check with the clerk to find out for sure.
It's a lot. There's a lot. And there's a lot of names of people that are very well known.
That's right. One of the things that I think that we need to work on, and I don't know whether we have the ability to make this change or whether it has to be the province. Right now, July 26th is the cutoff date for registration.
Right.
It's also the cutoff date for withdrawal. I'd like to see a week in there between the deadline for registration and a week to withdraw, because I'll use Nebin as an example. 3 people registered to run in Nebin on the last day because they thought that the incumbent was going to be acclaimed and they didn't want that. If there was a week to rethink, we might have a 2-person race.
Right.
And then the same thing in the at-large. I mean, there are people who ran at-large who I think are thinking, what am I doing?
Yeah.
You know?
That's very true. So, you've made a good point. You have a good argument about how it may not be a complete set of fresh faces around that table.
Yeah, but there will be fresh faces.
There will be some.
McKellar and McIntyre will be new.
Right.
I think that there's a couple of wards that are competitive. Westford and Red River.
Right.
Plus, Frank and I are running for mayor. At the very least, one of us is gone. Maybe two.
Maybe two.
Okay, so we'll
There are pockets of new people.
We'll have between 3 and 5 new members for sure.
I hear a lot of people saying, "Oh, it's time to change, and we got to change. We got to get rid of the incumbents." Remember the last time we had major change around that table, Ian? Do you remember those days?
That's why I ran in the first place.
Do you remember
because
those?
of that chaos.
Remember those lawsuits?
Yes.
And the chaos that was. That was when a lot of new people showed up with a lot of new ideas that turned things upside down. Do you worry about that?
Oh, very much so. And in part, and this comes back to your first question, that's why I'm running for mayor, because I think that the new crop are going to need some mentoring from somebody with a lot of experience, who understands how the process works, understands how the city works.
Yeah.
I mean, I've been an employee as well as a counselor, so I've seen it from both sides, and they need some guidance. And if we have 5 new members, that's a big chunk of people with a lot of new ideas. Some will be good, some might be off the wall,
right?
But then some of the current members, it's the same thing.
It's
so
very much the same.
Yeah.
Yeah. So okay. So looking forward then. As the mayor, your job is going to be to keep that group together.
That's right.
It is going to be to keep everybody on the same playing field.
Or to work together to decide what the playing field is.
How do you think your relationship will change with incumbents that are back and you're the mayor?
Well, I think that a lot of the...
it's like your coworker becoming the boss.
That's right, yeah. Well, they turn to me now for leadership on process, on a number of issues that they understand my knowledge of certain things. They also have seen me do the sort of facilitation kind of process. So I don't see an issue whatsoever of that. I mean, the reality is that if I'm mayor, Frank won't be there. So it's not like I have to work with a competitor.
That's true.
But I have good relationships with everybody on council. And
what about the ones running against you?
I have good relationships with them too.
Yeah, right?
Yeah.
Not throwing eggs or anything yet?
No,
okay,
no.
Good.
I'm not running against them. I'm running for the job.
There you go. You know what? Every politician should say that. Okay, we're going into, I'm bringing you to the hot spot now. Ian.
Northwood's a hot spot?
Well, it is because I live there.
Okay. But so do I.
But Northwood is going to be an example to the rest of the community if all things happen this year. So as we drive down Edward Street here, which is a route that I take literally 6 times a day. Well, this road is a mess, but we'll get to that later. We're coming up to the dream of a roundabout at the corner of Redwood and Edward. Now listen, roundabouts, that's fine. We can get into the discussion of the safety and all of that. We're going to save some money on some light bulbs and some lamp posts.
And energy consumption, and that's the real driving force.
Come on.
It is.
There's 6 light bulbs there. It's not drawing that much energy. Come on.
No. It's nothing to do with the light bulbs.
And what are you talking about?
Those are LEDs. I'm talking about cars stopping, idling.
Stopping and idling. Okay.
Although the new technology,
my car turns off.
So does mine.
Yeah.
It's a hybrid, so it's much easier to do. But we've got enough land here at this intersection to do
fine.
it.
But there's something that I haven't seen come up yet, and this is 2-part. I've lived down here all my life. Northwood is an interesting ward because as a lifer in this city, I've come back to this ward twice now. And it is incredible to me, my friends from grade school and high school who are moving into Northwood, that it's almost like we're all coming back.
Yep.
This intersection is the hub. We've got shopping, we've got a pharmacy, we got dentists, we've got everything.
And we've got an entrance to Chapel's North,
which is a very important thing.
Yep.
Because this intersection is not only very busy traffic-wise, especially at 3:30 when the buses start coming through here. It's extremely busy. But there is an exceptional amount of foot traffic here, Ian, that goes from Northwood to Chapel's every day, all year. Bikes, walkers, seniors that are going from this side of Edward Street to the shopping mall. Nowhere in this plan for this roundabout do I see anything about how this will help pedestrians. There is no crosswalk on this, so you can't put a traffic light on a roundabout. So how does Grandma get from this side of the street to the pharmacy?
You know what? That's a very good question, and I don't have an answer
Well,
for
why
you.
hasn't it come up?
Because nobody's raised it.
Okay, well, I just did.
Okay, all
Can
right.
you bring that up?
Yeah, but we certainly can look to Great Britain and Europe to see how they deal with those issues.
But Ian, they're building those roundabouts in places that don't have huge pedestrian traffic.
Yes, they do.
You think so?
Oh yeah, I've in my mother's hometown in Scotland. They've got
But
any
they're
number
built
of them.
around that, though, aren't they?
No, these were modern inventions. They weren't there at the beginning, but they've incorporated the pedestrian component in it. And in terms of this one, just sort of on the fly, there's nothing to say that we can't put crossovers at the entrance to the roundabout.
Oh, that's a disaster.
Why?
Because you're going to be coming around the other side, and then all of a sudden you got to stop.
Well, yeah, I know, but
Here's
it's a balancing between smooth flow of traffic and pedestrian access. And you're right.
But why
it is
here? Why here? Not that I'm not being the NIMBY guy.
No.
That's not what I'm saying, because I would welcome not having to stop at this light, because I guarantee you I stop at this light at least half of my time through the day. But why this one? This one to me is important because of its connection to chapels and because of the population and the core that's here. Why this one? And why didn't I get something in the mail? I only live a couple blocks away.
Well, okay. 2 questions, 2 answers.
Okay.
This one, because we have very few intersections that have the land around it to allow for the creation of what
there's an empty lot there, and this parking lot.
It's a 4-lane roundabout too,
which is even more complicated.
Okay. So that's and we've been under a lot of pressure to find ways in which we can reduce greenhouse gases, and by eliminating traffic lights and allowing roundabouts provides for free flow.
Say that 10 times fast.
Free flow.
Yeah.
I sound like Donald Trump. So we've been under pressure to do it. So this one works. We've looked at some other ones. We've looked on John Street, where John Street Road comes off. We don't have enough land there to do it, and the configuration doesn't work. So
us Northwood people are the guinea pigs.
You are. Thought that through.
Why didn't I hear about it?
Oh, because it's only a concept at this point.
I thought it was in the budget for next year.
Yeah, but being in the budget doesn't mean it happens right away.
Oh, okay. I thought this was a done deal.
No. So there will be some design work done, perhaps a couple of options, some kind of public meeting.
There better be.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, because you can see that this intersection has fallen apart. I don't think those curbs have been done since I used to walk to school at St. Vincent's X amount of years ago. So, here on the south end of town, it's important that at some point in this conversation, we address the elephant in the room. We have a crime issue.
Yes.
Part of me, as again a lifer of this town, wonders out loud if we actually do have a crime issue or if we're just hearing about it more than we used to, because I think social media has certainly helped that, in not a positive way either. Crime is changing, and the issues behind the crimes are changing. What's your gut tell you? Are we worse off? Are we in trouble? What does it look like 5 years from now?
I think that and I'm glad you phrased it in terms of, is this sort of a social media kind of phenomena, or is it mainstream media? I mean, I won't get into that.
You're sitting with the mainstream media.
I know.
You got to be careful with that one.
I'm looking at the clock.
Lots of time for this now.
I think too often in the past, people have been spooked by stories on radio, on print, on television about a child abduction in Tennessee, and it's translated into, I've got to keep my kids locked up. So, having said that, recognizing that the media does have a role, because we are sharing much more than we ever did before.
There is a reason, and just to clarify, there is a reason, because we get called out quite a bit online about why isn't the media reporting this story.
Yeah.
We only report the stories that the police tell us to report, and that's on purpose.
Yeah, which is good.
Because otherwise we're putting the fear of God in everybody if you read all of the baloney that's online.
That's right, yeah. But you don't control CNN.
No, and we see that. That's right, and we see it every day.
So anyway, but back to your question. I think we do have a real problem right now, and it is different than it's ever been before. The drug related incidences, the guns coming into our community, the gang sending teams in to take over homes and co-opt the residents. Those are really, really serious. I'm pleased with what the police have done so far, but it's like that whack-a-mole.
One pops up, and then you got to get the other one. Yeah.
So we really need to provide additional supports to the police. When Acting Chief Sylvia Hoth was before council a couple of weeks ago, I put the question to her whether, does she need more resources, and she said yes.
Absolutely, she does.
So I checked into it, and I found out that when the neighborhood policing program was started in Thunder Bay, it was a decision by council to provide additional dollars to the police services. See, because we can't tell the police services what to do.
Right.
The police services board can't tell the chief how to run the day-to-day operations.
Right.
And by the way, when I'm elected mayor, I'm going to take my seat on the police services board. It'll be the first time in 8 years that the mayor has sat.
Wow.
Okay, so I mean it's important. Yeah, very important. But I want to work wearing the two hats to find a way in which we can increase the police budget, whether it's they ask for more and we give them, or whether we do a separate allocation for some special projects like the Corps, like the drug squad. So that's on one side. The other side is we've got to do more and do it with the province in terms of some of the underlying causes. Poverty, addictions. Although I'm pleased that in the last couple of weeks we've gone a long way to dealing with some of the addiction issues by approving the rezoning for the hotel on Dawson Road for the 30, up to 30 people a year, or 30 beds for 90 people a year. Partway through the process for the gift of land for the Indigenous Friendship Center and Aboriginal Housing Services. I pulled that together with those organizations before City Council. 20 beds for youth, transition home facilities, wonderful. Helps them get on their feet, then they can move into mainstream housing.
These are big deals. This is important stuff.
That's right.
But we have a social crisis here a little bit with drugs and with the availability and with the changing population. So, when you have your mayor's hat on, what kind of things? And this isn't a leading question in any sense. I'm actually curious. Have you thought about? One guy is not going to come in and change the addictions issue here.
No.
But are there things that we could be doing better that you would like to change?
Okay. There has to be things we could be doing better. Quite frankly, that's not an area of expertise I have. I would work with the Crime Prevention Council, the Drug Strategy Coordinator, the folks at St. Joe's, the people who understand this.
Ask them. Ask the experts.
Because the last thing we need is somebody who comes in thinking that they have the answers for everything, and find out after the fact that they really don't, but they convinced everybody to do it.
Right.
Let's use fact-based, evidence-based decision making for these kind of things. But we have to do what we need to do, because we're losing too many of our young people, too many of our not so young people.
Yeah.
It's just awful what's been happening.
It's it troubles me a little bit because it seems to be focused in core areas. It doesn't seem to be a citywide issue yet.
Actually, you're wrong. It's in every neighborhood.
Well, it's showing up in every neighborhood in all kinds of different ways, right?
Yeah. But not just showing up. It exists in every neighborhood.
Yeah, I think you're right.
It's not just the poor who are addicted. It's the middle class. It's the upper class. That I'm told that we would be very surprised at some of the people who are attending some of the methadone clinics and what have you.
And so it is, but it's also not just a Thunder Bay issue.
No, it's widespread.
And that's where I get frustrated. And I try not to read too much on social media, even though I spend a lot of time on it. I filter it a little bit because
you just look at the pictures, right?
I do.
Yeah.
Usually the dog videos because I like those. I get a good laugh out of some of those.
Okay.
But if I read all of that stuff, you would think this is just a Thunder. The phrase that I hate the most is that whole typical Thunder Bay thing.
Yeah.
Really, it happens everywhere. So it's not just us, and everybody's got to do something. Everybody's got a part of that to fix it.
Yeah. And actually, the same thing applies to the images of murders, the images of racism. I mean, when I'm elected, one of the first things I'm going to do is I'm going to go visit the mayor of Winnipeg. He's done some really good work around Indigenous relations and racism. I want to find out what he's done and what we can learn from him.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
One last part about relations, especially. Don't give me the candidate for mayor answer. Give me the Iain Angus, my pal.
They're the same thing.
They are not. Well, usually they are. It's how you word it.
Yeah.
So let me word it this way. Is that damn bridge ever going to open? I don't think it is.
Well, CN has no choice. They have to reopen it.
Well, they can stretch this out for the Supreme Court for another 2 years.
They can try, but if the Supreme Court declines to hear their appeal, and we expect to hear that by January, they have no choice.
Okay, let me ask you this question, and please push back if I'm completely off base. How come there was nobody standing next to Chief Collins a couple of weeks ago when he was talking about they were going to build their own bridge there? How come there was nobody from our side of that bridge standing there?
The reality is, because we have taken CN to court, that the moment that we appear to be backing off, or the moment that we say something specifically about solutions, we've undermined our case.
Wow. Now, you're the first person to say that to me. I had no idea.
I've probably broken a rule.
Well, you're just telling me what the rule is.
Yeah. So, but that's the reality of legal actions, that it's frustrating for politicians.
Are we doing enough? Is council doing enough right now? Is administration doing enough right now to get that process going?
Oh, yes.
Are they doing everything that they can? Because we don't see a lot of it.
That's right. Well, and you can't see it because because it's a legal matter. The discussions have to be held behind closed doors, because you don't want the opponent to know what your strategy is.
Right. That's true.
They don't want to know the length of your research and what have you. So you're confined in terms of what you can. You can't say anything on that, and you leave it to the lawyers to follow through.
That's what you pay them for.
Yeah, that's right.
Let them figure it out.
Yeah. But I am optimistic that we will get that bridge back up and running.
We need the bridge.
I think CN has just been so disrespectful of this community.
Both sides.
Both sides. Yeah.
It's almost like they've broken us up.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's not only inconvenient; it's a matter of safety. I just hate the fact that it's taking as long as it has.
I do too. I used to travel over that bridge.
Oh, to Chippewa.
2 to 4 times a day when I lived there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Favorite part was those rickety panels at the bottom.
Yes.
Scare the life out of you.
And being told by the bus driver, "Don't stick your head out."
Yeah, because it's a little tight.
Yeah.
Be careful. God, be careful. We're almost done. We're heading back to your campaign office. Listen, you've been a great servant to this community for a very long time, and I thank you for that. I also appreciate, because I have nothing else to do on Monday nights and I watch. I appreciate how you, among others, are not shy to push back a little. Last question. And I wrote about this in my blog a couple of weeks ago and got a tremendous amount of response. Not because I'm a no writer, because I raised the point that I've had trouble in the last couple of months with council going against the recommendations of administration, especially when it comes to spending money. If you said this before, and I am a firm believer that smart people surround themselves with people that are smarter than them. That's what makes you smart, is that you hang out with people that are smarter than you. You have a really good administrative team that knows a lot of stuff. And they tell you might not want to do this, or maybe you shouldn't do this, and council folds their arms, pouts a little, does a couple of 5-minute monologues, and then says we're doing it anyway. It makes me crazy because they know things, Ian, and they tell you things, and I don't want to get into the whole Grace Place discussion because that's a whole different kind of discussion. But we have a budget process to build those kinds of things into the budget so that you don't have to be asked for it. ThunderCon needed money. It's a great organization. They're doing cool things, but it is not their place to show up and ask for a handout and get it, because I can't do it. I'd like to, because I'd like to finish up my house. But those are two examples. Magnus Theater is the third one, where these are good things. They're good things. But there is a reason administration has given you the recommendation not to hand out money and to stop chipping away. One last thing, and the worst response on council, to me, this is just my opinion, is, oh, but it's just a tiny part of the budget. It's the principle, isn't it?
Okay.
So,
first of all, you're wrong on Magnus.
Okay.
That was they went through the process, and it was a recommendation that came from administration.
Excellent.
That they should be, and it's a June application for funding for the next year.
Perfect. My apologies.
But you're dead on in terms of the other two. In defense, that's the only two we've done in this term of council.
That doesn't matter.
Okay, but both were unique circumstances, and I give Shelby Chung credit for figuring out an alternate approach. The money initially will come from one fund, but it will come out of the hotel tax. So and you're right, but those are what administration was warning us about was, look, you're opening the doors and it's against policy.
You really are.
Okay, but council set the policy. So council always has, dare I say it, a notwithstanding clause.
You have an out.
To where we can say, there are circumstances where it makes sense to do this. I don't like going outside of the budget process. I would rather be up front in the budget and say, okay, let's do what we used to do. We used to have a contingency fund. It was a slush fund.
Yeah,
to be honest with you.
Just that.
Yeah, where council could pick and choose who they wanted to support. We've done really well over many years, where we've gone from the manager of the gardens would make deals by himself for sports groups, giving them a break on the rent, what have you. We changed that into a process where there was criteria, there was an application process, and so forth. And in fact, in our cultural and youth funding, we've now recognized that our once a year application deadline, which was June for the following year, didn't provide enough flexibility to meet the needs of some of the organizations who have an in-year request.
Okay, great.
So we've added a new category, and we do it twice a year now. Once in the spring, once in the fall.
So
we evolve our policies to meet ever-changing needs.
Excellent. So you tell me that it's only happened a couple of times, and that's fine.
Yeah. But where it has happened more than that is on the planning side, where administration has come with a recommendation. We say we don't like that recommendation, but administration has worked with us, and they say, okay, here's the alternate resolution that sends it back to us, so we can write the right script, so that if it's appealed, we're covered. Because sometimes council has to make common sense recommendations. Like one example, the border for a zone is down the middle of the street.
Right.
So once, and they're saying, well, you can't do the same thing on the other side of the street. And we're saying, come on, give us a break.
Why are we doing this? This is an interesting discussion, because I appreciate the fact that you have the history that you do and the knowledge that you do, and that's why I feel like I can ask or bring up a little bit tougher stuff. Does that
mean you're going to give my competitors a free ride?
No, well they got to pay just like you do before you get out.
Okay.
How confident are you?
Well,
it's a tough question.
It's a very tough question. I'm feeling very good about what I'm hearing.
What's the response in the doors like?
Nobody home. The not homes are winning. But then the not
you got to stop going at noon.
No, it doesn't matter whether it's morning, afternoon, or evening. The not homes
nobody's
are winning.
Home. Okay.
Between both of those people who are at home, and I'm certainly getting a lot of feedback on what the issues are.
Mm-hmm.
And I've been doing a lot of plant gating, greeting people as they go to work or go to the market or what have you.
Nice.
Getting a very good response there. But I don't know. I'm working on the assumption that I'm in second place and running hard. I've always taken that approach. Because I don't have money for any polling, so I don't know.
Polling.
Yeah. But I got nice bus signs though.
You do, and you know what? I like your billboards too.
Thank you.
And the car is cute, but you could have, at least had a different color car to match the logo. That's my only thing, is that you could have worked on that.
Yeah.
You see though from running at large how it's a bit of a different monster running for mayor.
It is, yeah. Because you're running for one job, whereas
you got a 1 in 5 shot with the other one.
I didn't have to campaign for at large.
Right.
Name recognition, was guaranteeing me a spot.
Your history, yeah.
And I came first or second every time I ran, but that doesn't necessarily translate into the mayor's.
Are you nervous about the split?
I don't think that any of the newcomers will cause any major splits.
There's some big names though on that mayor's ticket.
Well, I think the reality is it's Bill Morrow, Frank Puglia, and Iain Angus that are the prime contenders for the position.
You don't see Shane as a contender?
No, I think he was a one-issue candidate last time, and that issue really is not front and center this time. So
that's true.
I think his votes will be spread amongst the other 7 or 8 newcomers. Sort of the anybody but.
Yeah, that anybody buts.
Yeah.
Right, and that's something to think about.
But back to the confidence question. I know that the majority of people in Thunder Bay like the quality of life that we have.
Mm-hmm.
They want to see money invested in those areas, whether it's an indoor soccer plex, or fixing our baseball fields or parks, or our recreation programs, or the art gallery, or the symphony, or Magnus, and all of the ones we support. And they know that that's where I'm at in terms of
You've always been a supporter of those things.
In part because I always knew that there are others on council who wanted to cut them. So I needed to be a louder advocate on that, which has led to people thinking that I like to spend.
Just Rebecca thinks that. But you're right, and I've talked to other councillors, actually, ward councillors who often say the same thing, is that when you're supporting parks or the arts or those kinds of things, the ones that, the small minority that doesn't support those things by either patronizing those places or so on, think that you're just throwing money away. But for those of us that do, we think it's a good spend.
Yep. Best example I have is the community auditorium.
Oh.
Big debate. Unfortunately, we downsized it because of the opposition, and we've lost a lot of our opportunities. But the best thing that ever happened was Vera Lynn coming to town.
Oh my gosh.
And
Vera Lynn?
And
you think that was the best thing that happened?
No, but let me tell you why. There was so much demand for tickets, they had to put on a second show. And guess who was in the audience?
All of the people
who didn't want the community auditorium.
The auditorium is an interesting one, and just because I just thought of it. The auditorium is one of the only funded arts cultural places in the community whose budget has not increased.
Yeah.
And they're still plugging away with a budget that's 20 years old.
And not only has the budget not increased, they still show a debt to the city because of what that previous council decided they wanted to do, and they owe us about $800,000 that they can never pay, but it keeps showing up in their books.
That's not right.
I want to wipe it out, write it off.
Well, why wouldn't you?
Yeah, give them some sense. Okay, we're above water
finally, because they do incredible things.
That's right. Yeah.
But they've been stuck with the same amount of money.
Yeah, and they've done incredibly well, and they've reduced staff significantly.
And still have a great operation. I think it is a jewel in our community that we can't lose.
Yeah.
So you're a couple weeks away. Best of luck to you. Again, I appreciate this because you said in your email this is a different way. This is kind of a weird way to do an interview, but it's just a real conversation.
Yeah. I think it's wonderful.
Well, I think it's a way to get you guys out, and one of the reasons that I've had trouble with this is that without any major debates and with so many people on the ticket, it's difficult to have these kinds of conversations in a fair setting.
Yeah.
If I lock you in a vehicle, it's fair.
That's right.
And everybody has the same amount of time. Well, my friend, thank you.
Okay, thanks, John.
I really wish you the best of luck.
Good, appreciate it. I gotta get my jacket.
Get your jacket and get out of here. I gotta go get Frank. Frank's gonna be waiting for me in 10 minutes. I don't have far to go, thank God.
All right.
I still got gas too. The company's paying. I think we're good.
Good. Take care.
Thanks.